What's up, y'all? I just want to make this quick video on being a perfectionist and why I think it is actually worse to be a perfectionist. Um, this is something that I think a lot of people really don't talk about very often, and I kind of just want to express my opinions here in this video. But my main points here is that perfectionism is actually more so a self-sabotage, right? In my own experience, I kind of feel like it actually gives you more fear with your everyday life in terms of not only failure but also success, right? Because I mean, everyone's scared of failure, um, and that's obvious why. But I think fear of success, is actually equally just as bad, right? Um, like for a job interview, for example, because I personally think that people are very naturally scared of change and responsibility, right? That's why you typically see people not change the way they do certain things, or like even some things as simple as just stop drinking or whatever, um, right? Because as humans, we kind of want to stay on that path of least resistance, right? And I think that perfectionism actually makes those fears much more amplified. My second point here would be that perfectionism actually makes you a lot more susceptible to unrealistic standards, right? I mean, if you kind of look at like, there's like say for example, you're a model, and your job, you want to run in the high fashion industry, right? You want to be the one walking across the Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Victoria's Secret, whatever, right? Um, if you are like, obviously, if you're like fat or something like that, um, your chances of getting to walk on those runways are not as high as someone who is the ideal model, right? So I think it's all about kind of knowing where you sit and adjusting those standards, if you will. I think like poker is a great example. Poker is such a good example because when you get dealt out your cards in poker, you don't know what cards you're going to get. Okay. However, it's how you play those cards and how you are able to deal with your circumstances and make something out of yourself. And maybe you can win the whole pot. Maybe you can't. You might have to fold. Um, but that's live, right? This is the kind of things we have to go through. So I think it's you always have to keep yourself in a realistic mindset. Be real with yourself. Look at what you can improve on. If you really wanted to walk those high fashion model shoots, you gotta lose weight. Um, you gotta do all these things, right? But I digress. Fashion is being a model is very, you know, I and I mean you're kind of fighting against standards anyway, but that's kind of like one little example. And then my next point would be social media, and why social media will actually amplify your perfection anxieties, and why social media is actually probably not what you want to be looking toward. Um, because there's this thing on social media where people naturally want to show off their best self. It's psychology, it's basic psychology. Um, would you rather, show off yourself as homeless on the streets, or would you rather show yourself at fine dining restaurants and shit like this? Um, because it kind of brings these social benefits, if you could say that. But I think at the end of the day, we all have to remember every time that we see those things is actually creating little insecurity methods in our mind, right? Not that that's an entirely bad thing. However, if you're looking to not self-sabotage yourself, which is the whole point of this video, I think social media is the worst thing for that, because instead of looking at other people's posts and shit, of why do I not have this, or why am I not doing this, you have to instead kind of take that energy and put it into yourself. Is how can I actually do this and not just be jealous all the time? What can I do now that help me in the future? And then one of my last points here is each one of us kind of have like this inner critic, and we're all guilty of this. This is like a very natural thing that all of us kind of want to be safe, right? It's kind of like I talked about earlier, is that we're always on the path of least resistance, and that we're always looking to be safe and comfortable all the time. And this inner critic is basically like an enforcer of this, where the inner critic will consistently tell you that, I'm not good enough for this, I'm not good enough for that, I can't do that, they won't like me, things like this. And you have to realize when this inner critic is actually talking to you, okay? It doesn't mean that you're insane or something, like you belong in an asylum or nothing, but it's kind of like we all know that voice. And I think a good mindset is to know when those ideas are coming inside your head and be like, no, that is not who I am and not what I am, you know? Um, and so I think it'd be a good idea if you can do practices, and whenever you feel these feelings of this, that you sit down, that you actually realize when it's happening and you can adjust, and your quality of life will go up significantly. So yeah, that's my video, guys. If you guys enjoyed, leave a thumbs up. Subscribe to my YouTube. I may start Twitch streaming if I get enough viewers, but we'll see. Um, Maybe I can play some games or something. Drop a like if you guys really enjoyed the video. I'll see y'all next time.